Following Jesus, we participate in God's reconciling work by making disciples of all peoples and all generations. That's the mission of our church. It's kind of hefty. Follow Jesus, participate with what Jesus is doing by reaching everyone, every people, every age. And we know that in a world that is so deeply divided by people group, by race, by age, by political affiliation, by so many other things that divide us from one another, that living out this mission can be quite difficult for us as the people of God at Lake Avenue. And last week in the sermon, I pointed out that evil is real. And the strategy of evil is to divide and to isolate. And yet the message of Jesus is anything but that. This weekend we'll continue in our Traits series, and we're going to actually look at Mark's account of the same story that we just read about the demon-possessed men and the pigs. In Mark, it's one man, same story. I want you to read it. It's in Mark chapter 5. We're actually going to jump from there to James and then go over to Proverbs. I believe that there's a word for us in our Traits series, especially in light of our mission to follow Jesus, participate in his reconciling work by making disciples of all peoples, all generations. There are things we have to build and cultivate that I, as your pastor, don't have unless I cultivate them with God and in community at Lake. And so we'll continue in that series this weekend. Read Mark 5. Note the difference in the way that story is told in Mark versus Matthew, what we read last week. And I look forward to worshiping with you on this Sunday. In fact, Sunday, big day. And if you are a father or a grandfather and you are able, trust me, I don't want you to leave your house if you are at risk, but at 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, we are coming together with the men of Pasadena. It's put on by some churches in Pasadena where it's called Fathers United for Justice, where we will come as the men of Pasadena and be together from 6 to 7. There will be a live stream option for that. I don't have that information yet, but we'll make sure we get it to you somehow before. But I invite you to be with us this Sunday. It's an important day. Yes, it's Father's Day, but a great day for us in the greater Pasadena family, the greater Pasadena area, to come together for an hour. And we will pray and we will stand together for some things. And I invite you to come and to be a part of that. And then a week from this coming Sunday, we actually have this great opportunity. We've already told you that the movie Just Mercy, a story about Walter McMillan, Brian Stevenson, that movie is free right now on all platforms. Amazon Prime, Apple, wherever you rent on digital movies, that's free. In fact, I watched it this week with my oldest son. And try to get that watch it, because on the 12th, we have an opportunity to have a friend of ours, Dominic Gilliard, who's a public theologian, who is a wonderful man. He's met with our ministry council. He's written a book around theology of God and the incarceration called Rethinking Incarceration, and he is actually going to lead a webinar with us. So you got to watch the movie first, and then there'll be a webinar. Those details will be under below, and I invite you to come and to continue to learn what God might be teaching us in this moment. Now, the movie is quite moving, and more than moving, what it exposes, and especially in this moment, is so critical. And we want to be a church on the move, a church in motion, which means we are moving and learning and learning together. And so please mark that a week from Sunday. Hey, I also want you to mark July 5th. That's a Sunday. I don't have any details yet, but most likely 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Your pastors miss you, and we want to see you. And so we are putting together a drive-through event. What that means, I'll let you know soon. But just an opportunity for you to drive through the parking lot of the church. We're really following the cue of our family ministry who did this last weekend. And we just miss you so much. We want to say hi to you from a distance and in your car. We want to pray with you. We want to just be and have a smile and a laugh together, even though we'll probably all be behind masks. You can see my smile up here. But July 5th, we just want to see you. There are some things we're going to open up. In fact, we're quite excited about this. So last week I told you weddings and memorials. We are in the process of figuring out how to open up our Wednesday night Illuminus service. It will have to be limited in the number of people who are there, and the way we'll sit in the sanctuary. But we're looking to do that as soon as possible, so be on the lookout for information about that. The reason we can do that one and not Sunday is we can actually control Wednesday night without singing, and that mandate around singing is very complicated. We're hoping that things get opened up sooner and sooner, but we're going to open up our Wednesday Illuminus, find a reservation system, and if you are able to come and to join, man, we'd sure love you to be there for our prayer service. Also, Comunidad is doing the exact same thing, gathering some people in their community on campus together for times of prayer. And so that's very, very exciting. And we are continuing each week to think about and to pray about and ask God, what can we do, not what can't we do? And so hang in there with us. Hey, I have a couple other things, but first I want to move to a conversation that Pastor Myra and I had. Many of you know John Perkins, and we're going to talk about him in this, what you'll see in a moment. But John Perkins is a legend in Christianity, and a very important person in the life of Lake Avenue Church. Well, he turned 90 years old this week, and Myra is very close with Dr. John Perkins. And in a meeting this week with our associate pastors, Myra began to share with us about a conversation she had with him on his birthday. And I asked her, I said, hey, would it be appropriate for us to share some of this conversation with the church? And Myra said, absolutely, because much of what they talked about had to do with us at Lake Avenue Church. So please watch this. It's about 10 minutes conversation with Myra about John Perkins, and then I'll have some short words for you at the end.
Hello, Lake. Pastor Jeff here with Pastor Myra, and we're just going to have a conversation, and I think there's some important conversation, Myra, you had this week with someone near and dear, not only to yourself, but to our church. And so could you share with us, who is John Perkins, and how does that name connect to Lake Avenue Church and to Pasadena?
Yes, I did get a chance to talk to Dr. Perkins this week. And John Perkins is somebody who I would not have known about if our family had not made it to the doorstep of Lake Avenue Church. This is somebody who has been a dear friend to Lake Avenue, and I learned about him for the first time when I was actually volunteering at STARS, and I ran across a book of his in the STARS library, and it actually was a children's version of Let Justice Roll Down. That's how I first saw a picture of his face. And wow, that was a long time ago, but really his life in ministry has had such a huge impact on our life as a family. It is because of him that we live where we live and we engage in life and ministry the way we do. So between Lake Avenue Church and Dr. Perkins, that has really shaped our family in tremendous ways. So I'm very grateful for him and very grateful for his contributions to Lake Avenue and our community.
Yeah. And so for those who might be aware of Harambee Ministries, right, that's just one of the many ministries that Dr. Perkins has spent his life creating and sustaining and nurturing.
Right. Yes. He started Harambee here when he was living in Pasadena, and that still continues to be a way that Lake Avenue engages, and a lot of our members support that ministry. He also started the Spencer Perkins Center, where he lives in Mississippi. But he also started the Christian Community Development Association. And that is something that I have the privilege of chairing the board for, which is amazing. When I first met Dr. Perkins, and then suddenly I was in a boardroom with him, I was like, why am I sitting here right now with this man? But he's just a great leader and a great friend.
And he turned 90 this week, and that was kind of the genesis of us having this conversation. Would you tell us about some parts? You called him thinking it would be a very short phone call. It ended up being a longer phone call. Could you share with us how that call went and some things you and Dr. Perkins talked about?
Yeah, first he and Vera May celebrated 70 years of marriage. That's crazy. It's a long time. And it was really fun to see pictures of them on social media. Like their kids posted pictures, and they're just so happy. They're just so happy together. Every time he talks about her, it's really beautiful when he talks about his wife, how much he loves her and how much of a rock she has been. But then the next day was his 90th birthday, 90 years old. So yeah, exactly what you said. I called him, and I'm thinking like, I'm just going to call him and thank him for the impact that he's had on my life. And then that turned into like an hour-long conversation where he just began to share a lot of things about how he's hearing God right now, what he's thinking about at this stage of his life. And he talks about it in a lot of places, but I feel like I got to just sit in the living room with him and listen when nobody else was listening to him talk about these things. He talked about the things that have been hard for him and the things that he's celebrating right now. And then he began to talk about the things that bring him joy. And he began to talk about Lake Avenue. Wow. And he said, y'all bring me joy. Y'all are my joy. Myra, you, Lake Avenue, I'm so grateful that God took me to Pasadena, California, and I became a friend of Lake Avenue Church. I'm so grateful for the relationships and the friendships that I built there. Some of those friends I talk to every week, still, you know, in my 90 years, I talk to them every week. I'm so grateful for the leadership of Lake Avenue Church. He mentioned Pastor Ray Ortland and Pastor Paul Cedar, and he talked about the deepening of Lake Avenue Church's commitment to the local community and the mobilizing of the masses at Lake Avenue, and how business people started looking at our community in different ways and started investing their time and their love, their energy, and their financial resources in ministries, some of which are still around and making an amazing impact to this very day. So as he reminisced, he just said, y'all are my joy. And so he asked me about Pastor Waybright, and he knows that Pastor Kirk carried on, you know, that legacy of commitment to the community. And then Pastor Greg Waybright came on, and that also continued. So he asked me about him, and then he asked me about now, who's leading Lake now? So I began to tell him about you. I said, well, Pastor Jeff has been there for a long time now, around 20 years. He was a youth pastor, and that's a person that God has in the seat right now. And he said, wow, he said, the pastor leading Lake Avenue Church is leading at a time that is really critical, not only critical for our nation, but critical for the history of the church in America. And wow, I thought that is a very strong and very heavy statement. And coming from a man who marched during civil rights, you know, as I thought about it, coming from him, somebody who was jailed, somebody who has spent his life because of his experiences and his perspectives as an African-American man, working towards a shalom in communities and towards a hard work of racial reconciliation, that statement is a heavy one.
And so it's been, yeah, I feel that heavy. I feel that heavy thing very personally, but I also sense a privilege in it. It's been a couple of days, and this is super unscripted. People might think we scripted this, but Myra, you've been sitting on that call for a couple of days. I'd love to just hear how you've been reflecting on some of those words personally, and if the Lord has given any words for our church community from you through that phone call with Dr. Perkins for us in this moment on this day. Is there anything bubbling to the top for you?
Yeah, there's a lot, and some of it is personal because of my own relationship with him. I have often referred to him as a spiritual dad. And so the words that he says to me also weigh heavily on me. And so I think about them a lot. But the words that he had for Lake Avenue Church have always been so loving and so appreciative. Every time I talk with him, he talks about Lake Avenue Church that way. And it always leaves an impression on me that lasts for a long time. And it's very encouraging for me. But as I thought about it, I thought these words are something that I hope that we are mindful about and that we are prayerful over. Mindful and prayerful that we are a part of a church that has this history. So we are a part of that legacy. And that's still what we're doing. That's still the church that we are seeking to be, right? And then mindful and prayerful as followers of Jesus, that not only has God called us together to be a part of this church and this church story, but wherever we live, we are called to be that kind of Jesus follower that is thinking about what God is doing in our community and how God is inviting us in to follow him and be people who are bringing joy, bringing reconciliation and joy into our communities. And then the last one is really his last statement about the leadership of our church, just the responsibility, which I think is a sacred one. It's a beautiful opportunity, but a sacred responsibility to lead Lake Avenue Church. And so what that is for you and what that is for the full leadership of Lake, I would hope that our church would be mindful and prayerful about that. And, and if our church has not already, if everyone has not already done that, to join us in prayer for you and your leadership and for all the folks who are leading at Lake Avenue, because these are hard days, right? They're hard days, but God is really up to something. We don't even know how this is all going to unfold. But there is joy. I know there is joy in that. And so his words, y'all are my joy. When he said that, and as I've thought about it, I thought, or I imagine God saying to us, y'all are my joy. Lake Avenue Church, y'all are my joy.
Myra, that I think we need to be reminded of that. And you and I have served here a long time together. And when we talk about a family as a church, and the reality of this moment we are in, as a church, as a community, as a nation, as a world, really, these can be hard times for family. These can be hard times for family. And I'm grateful that you had a conversation with the grandfather of our family to almost bring some hope and some perspective, to remind us of who we are, to remind us of our consistent calling as a church. And then your pastoral words here, Myra, to be prayerful, to be mindful, to bring joy into darkness. That gives me hope. I hope that gives us all hope today. Thanks, Myra, for all you do. You're pretty humble about it, but you are the chair of the CCDA board. That's a big deal, and I know that has been a huge role for you the last many years, and we're proud to have you in those spaces. I'm proud to call you friend. Thanks for stewarding your conversation with Dr. Perkins for us. All right?
Thanks.
All right, bye.
I really view that conversation that Myra had with Dr. Perkins as a gift, not just for Myra, but for all of us. I continue to be blown away with the legacy of what God has chosen to do through the ministry, through his church here at Lake Avenue. And I have every reason to believe that God is continuing to write an incredible story. And I pray that all of us would be found faithful in this moment, found faithful to see where God is moving and to join him in his work. Hey, I want to encourage you. Today is Juneteenth. For some of us, that's new to us, a new holiday. It's the day 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, where that news of slavery ending finally hit Galveston, Texas. It's the day where this is noted and remembered as the day where freedom was finally free. That's a big deal. That's worthy of a holiday. Especially this year, it's worthy of us never ever forgetting what Juneteenth is. And there are celebrations happening throughout Los Angeles. In fact, there's an opportunity tonight. The Community Clergy Coalition that I am a part of, that Lake is a part of, has been asked to participate in one that starts at 4 o'clock at the Rose Bowl, and you drive to City Hall. And that we just want you to be aware of those things. And tomorrow there is a family gathering on the grass of the Rose Bowl. These are things being put on by our community. In fact, our people are so deeply tied to our community. At each one of these things, there's always someone from Lake Avenue Church speaking, participating, helping to lead. I'm so proud of that. So pay attention to these opportunities. Come as you can. Obviously, if you're not supposed to leave your home, and if that, because of COVID, and it's just not wise for you, I'm not telling you to come out of your house, but know what God is doing and what is happening in our community. And it, just like the legacy of our church, these are places where the people of God show up. And I'm proud to be a part of a church with so many of you leading in these spaces. I'm proud that when I show up to protests and when I show up to prayer vigils, that I find Lake Avenue people not just participating, but leading And I'll feel that way on Friday. I will feel that way on Saturday with Dr. Ray Briggs and our own Dr. Pastor Chuck Hunt being able to speak at this family event on Saturday. And people of God, what is God doing? Well, our mission is to follow Jesus by making disciples, participating with what God is doing, by making disciples of all peoples and all generations. And so my prayer for you, till I see you on Sunday, is that we would all follow Jesus together, and that we would sense where he is, what he's doing, and that we would, like I said Sunday, jump on board with what God is doing. Not tell him to leave, but jump on board. And the work of being the Church of Jesus, a multi-ethnic, intergenerational expression of the Church of Jesus, that is going to be hard, but it's something I am giving my life to, I pray. And I'm grateful you are too. Have a great week. We'll see you Sunday.